president of our Storytellers of San Diego Association. Her stories, and I wanted to mention, she's even told internationally, because she's told in Denmark. She's told at the Exchange Place in the storytelling festival that is held yearly in Jonesboro, Tennessee. It's the largest storytelling festival in the world. Her stories are known to be delivered with wit, wisdom, and humor. Please welcome to our stage, Marilyn McPhie.
Thanks, it's an honor to be here. So my story comes from Scotland. Once there was a young fisher lad who lived in a small village on the west coast of Scotland. Now he went fishing every day and he loved fishing and he loved his boat, but what he really, really, really loved was the beautiful blonde lass that he'd fallen head over heels in love with. She had long, blonde, curly hair. She had long eyelashes. She had a dazzling smile. She moved with grace and charm, and he loved her so much. One day, he got his courage up, and he told his friends so he couldn't be able to back out. And he went to that young blonde lass, and he told her that he loved her, and he asked her to marry him. And she batted her long eyelashes and flashed her dazzling smile and said she really appreciated it, but she'd fallen for someone else. And he was crushed, absolutely crushed. And he knew one thing right away, and that was that he couldn't stay in that little fishing village. His friends, they would mock him, or worse yet, they would pity him. And then there was always the chance that he'd run into his own true love on the arms of another, and he couldn't imagine that happening. And so he put all of his things into his boat, and he set sail, uncharted waters. See what I did there? And he landed on a little uninhabited island. And over the course of several weeks, he built himself a simple house. Well, he went fishing every day, but he took his catch not to his own fishing village, but to one a little bit north where he could remain anonymous. But one day, when he was pulling in his nets, he found that he had caught something extraordinary. It was a mermaid. Now, I'm pretty sure that you know that if you're in Ireland and you catch a leprechaun, that he has to show you where he's hidden his pot of gold. But did you know that if you're in Scotland and you catch a mermaid, she's got to grant you a wish? Oh, let me go, she said. Oh, not until you grant me a wish, said the fisher lad. She said, all right, fine. Everybody always wishes for a bag of gold. I can arrange for that. He said, that's not my wish. She said, oh, you wish for more? Well, then I can have some servants deliver you a trunk full of gold right to your door to that little house on that island. This is days before Amazon, but see what you can promise when you're a mermaid? He said, that's not what I wish either, but if you know my island and you know my house, then you must know what my wish is. And she rolled her eyes and said, not that blonde girl. And he said, oh yes, my own true love. I wish for her to agree to marry me. You can make that happen, right? She said, well, yes, I can. You're sure? He said, I'm sure. She said, well, it'll take time. She handed him a ring and she said, take this ring and keep it for a year and a day. And at the end of that time, if you give her that ring, she will accept it and she will agree to marry you. He said, you're sure? She said, I'm sure. We have 100% consumer satisfaction guaranteed. And he said, and she won't have married someone else? She won't. All right then, he said. He took the ring and the mermaid jumped back into the sea. Well, he kept on fishing and things went, well, lonely, but okay. But one day when he was beaching his little craft, he saw what he took at first to be a pile of seaweed, but then it moved. And he realized that it wasn't a pile of seaweed at all, but it was a young woman. She was rather disheveled. Her hair was long and curly and so tangled up that, well, he'd taken it for seaweed. Maybe you have hair like that too. Or maybe actually you wished you did. And she looked up at him with pitiful brown eyes and she said, hello. He said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "I'm escaping from a difficult domestic situation." He said, "What?" She said, "Wicked stepmother." He said, "Oh, well, I'm sorry for you, but you can't stay here." She said, "Oh, I'm just looking for someplace safe where I can be alone." And he said, "Yeah, me too. That's why you have to leave." She said, I can't go back. My raft is broken." He said, "I'll help you fix it." She said, "And the wind is wrong." He said, "It'll be right tomorrow." She said, "Oh, please, let me stay. You know, I could make it worth your while. I'll fix you dinner every night, and I'll tidy things up around the house, and I'll be so quiet you won't even know I'm here, please." And she begged so pitifully that he said, "Oh, all right." And you know that brown-haired lass, she was as good as her word. Every night when the fisher lad came home from the sea, she had his dinner all laid out, and he could tell that she fixed things up around the house. And over the course of some weeks, she made some improvements. She got some glass and made a window, nice natural light. One day he noticed that she planted flowers in front of the house. That was lovely. And the meals were good. She would always take her plate and go off, and he didn't know where she ate or slept. He didn't really think about it much. But one day when he was mending some nets, he went into a shed where he kept some equipment, and he saw a pile of blankets in the corner, and he thought, "Oh no, that's where she sleeps. No one should be required to sleep with shovels and rakes." So he got some lumber, and he built her a little room on the side of his house. He could tell she was really pleased. Sometimes in the mornings, he would hear her humming a little tune that reminded him a lot of the lullabies that his mother sang. And one day, when he'd had a particularly good day of fishing, and the meal looked particularly delicious, he said to her, "You know, it's foolish for us to eat separately. You should sit here and eat with me." So she sat down. Now, those first few meals, they were pretty quiet, but after a while, she'd ask a question and he'd answer it, and well, then he'd tell her what happened that day, and she'd tell him of some plans. She told him about the wicked stepmother. He was sympathetic. He told her about his own true love, and she was happy for him. She said, "Oh, that's the ring then. They're on the mantle in the jar." "Oh, and that's why you're making all those little marks on the mantle." She said, "That's a mess. I'll make you a chart. It'll help." And it did. Well, and so time passed, and they became good companions. And finally, a year passed. And the next morning, that fisher lad, he saw that brown-haired lass coming out of her room with a big bundle of all of her things. He said, "Where are you going?" She said, "Well, I know that today's the day. You will come home with your own true love. I don't want to get in the way, so I'm leaving." He said, "Well, where are you going to go?" She said, "Well, I'll go back to my father's." He said, "But your stepmother." She said, "I know. I'm going to have to make friends with her." He said, "But your raft is broken." She said, "Oh, I fixed it." He said, "But the wind." She said, "Yeah, the wind's actually perfect today." He said, "Oh, well, thanks for everything." She said, "Thank you." And she left. And the fisher lad, he didn't go out fishing that day, but he sat in his chair and he stared into the fireplace. And in the afternoon, he went over to that mantle and he took the ring out of the jar, and he got in his boat and he set sail, not for his own fishing village, but for the one a little bit to the north. And there he asked around where the father of that brown-haired lass lived. When he walked through the gate, she was on her hands and knees in front of the door planting some flowers. She looked up, she was surprised. She said, "Oh my, I'm surprised to see you." He said, "Well, yes." And she said, so today was the day, right? I'm not wrong about that. The chart. He said, "No, today was the day." She said, "Well, so did you find your own true love?" And he said, "I did." She said, "And did you give her the ring, and did she agree to marry you?" And he held out the ring and said, "I don't know. You tell me." And she looked at the ring, and she looked at him, and she said, "Really?" He said, "Really." He said, "Will you marry me?" And she threw her arms around his neck and gave him a big kiss, which he took to be a yes. And so they went to the little kirk where he had grown up in that little fishing village, and they were married that very afternoon. And then on their way back to the shore, well, they caught a glimpse of that blonde lass across the courtyard. And she still had beautiful blonde hair and a dazzling smile. But to the fisher lad, she looked pretty, but nothing extraordinary. And they continued down to the beach to where their boat was. And there, sure enough, was the mermaid sitting on a rock. She said, just checking with you, making sure everything's okay. I've got the customer satisfaction survey. So, how did things work out? He said, really well. She said, did you find your own true love? He said, well, yes, I did. She said, and did you give her the ring? And did she agree to marry you? He said, yes, she did. Me, my wife. Well, the mermaid's brow furrowed, and she said, but wait, she's not blonde. She's not. And she doesn't have blue eyes. She doesn't. Are you sure you got the right girl? Yes, I'm very sure. Well, then I'll just mark it down as a 10, extremely satisfied, congratulations. And she dived back into the ocean. And the Fisherlad and his brown-haired bride, they went back to the boat, and they sailed to where they wanted to be the most of anywhere in all the world, their own little island, where, according to all accounts, they lived happily